About a month ago, Kemi Badenoch, who is now the leader of the Tory party, was on LBC taking callers from people who called in from the general public. And there was a guy who called from Chelmsford, and he was asked, what would make you vote Tory again? Because apparently he had spent the summer last year um, trying to boost the vote in Chelmsford for the Lib Dems. And what he said would make him vote Tory again has been of much conversation over the past month or so around the triple lock. And every time we talk about the state pension or the triple lock here on the channel, the comment section is just, it's toxic. And I'm fully prepared that it's going to be toxic again this time. But I want to cover this because there is an important conversation to be had as a nation, as individuals, that we have to have openly. And we have to listen to what is actually being proposed and the problem that we're facing. Because what Kemi goes on to talk about is 100% true. The fact is, the state pension and certainly the triple lock as a mechanism in the state pension is unsustainable. It cannot be sustained moving forward. There are some interesting data points which I'll take you through a bit later on. But let's listen to what Robbie from Chelmsford said and Kemi's response on LBC when she was there.
Could win you back to the Conservatives?
It's not very Tory, but it is more fair, and it is addressing an issue of waste, and it came up on Thomas Warbrick's programme. It is, given what you just said, Kemi, and the demographics question, which needs to be confronted, it's being serious and perhaps having some conversations about with Mel Stride, who I believe said the triple lock will become unsustainable. Now, I'm not talking about being mean to pensioners and taking away their money, because I know we don't want to do that, but there are some people that get the pension or get the triple lock applied to it who do not need it. So shouldn't we look at that and perhaps using that money to help build more houses or help young people to become homeowners?
So that's exactly the sort of thing that the policy work we're going to be doing will look at. I have always said that we don't do means testing.
We're going to look at the triple lock.
I know we're going to look at means testing. Means testing is something which we don't do properly here. I'm someone who always said, for example, that millionaires should not be getting the winter fuel payment. But what Rachel Reeves has done is the extreme version of that, where people who are actually on the breadline have had their winter fuel payment taken away. We don't have a system that knows who should get what. That's the sort of thing that we need to be looking at. Now, the triple lock is a policy which we supported throughout our 14 years in government. That was a Conservative policy, but we need to make sure that we are growing. Starting with the triple lock is not how to solve the problem. We need to start with, why are we not making the same kind of money we used to make? And I tell people that we started living off our inheritance. We're living off the work that previous generations did. We've got to give something to the next generation. What are we leaving them with? And that's what we've got to sort out. We can't just make ourselves comfortable now, spending their future. We need to give them a future.
Now, nothing that Kemi said there is controversial by any stretch of the imagination. But boy, if you pay attention to some of the news articles, it's been made out to be this big thing, this idea that you would means test the triple lock connected to the state pension. And the way this was framed was it should be means tested so that people who have more additional income aren't necessarily going to receive the uplift in their state pension, right? Now, that is controversial on its own, because you would argue that if you're a multimillionaire, you're retiring, you've paid into the system. So therefore, you're entitled to the state pension, you're entitled to the triple lock. So whilst this is an argument that potentially alienates certain people and penalizes them for hard work, when you look at the overall picture of the country, you can see where this will gain some popularity, because if you have enough money, you probably won't really care about triple lock impacting your state pension, even though you've actually worked for it. And I know, again, this is going to be a big conversation point. But there was one thing that she did mention in the previous section of her interview on LBC, and she mentioned demographics. And I want to read some stats to you, which is really, really important in the context of framing this conversation around the state pension and the triple lock, and the fact that the triple lock and even the state pension is just completely and utterly unsustainable. Unlike Norway, we don't have a sovereign wealth fund that will fund our state pension. Our state pension is effectively funded from the tax take, more specifically national insurance contributions. And this is a stat that gives us a projection of how out of kilter and unsustainable the triple lock and therefore the state pension is going to be moving forward. So again, this is from the Office of National Statistics. So in 2022, there were 28 people aged 65 plus for every 100 people of working age. It's 28% of people in 2022 was 65 plus. It is forecast by 2050 that this is going to rise to 40%. So that's 40 people aged 65 plus for every 100 people of working age. Now, that might not seem like a big deal on its own, as a data point on its own. But what is concerning is the fact that as a nation, we're not having babies at the same rate. So the population is increasing at that same rate. But more importantly, people are living much, much longer. And I know that this is a controversial statement, and it really, really shouldn't be. People slaughter me in the comments for saying life expectancy has increased. But when you go to the professionals who track all of this stuff, it is factual. Life expectancy has increased, which means that if you get your state pension at age 66 or 67 or even 68, it is likely that you're going to be in receipt of your pension for much, much longer than previous generations who may have retired at age 55, for example, but life expectancy was something like, 62. And I think this is where we get into a catch-22 situation, right? Because would you rather, and again, please let me know in the comment section, would you rather have the triple lock taken off the state pension or the state pension just completely gone altogether? Let me know in the comment section. I would argue that it's best to find a different way to be able to increase the state pension to keep up the cost of living than actually put the state pension itself in jeopardy. Now, the triple lock currently is a guarantee that the state pension will increase by either the highest of three measures: inflation, average earnings growth, or 2.5%. And that might seem fine. This is something that has been available now for some years, and it was a Tory policy, right? But when you have instances like in 2023 where the triple lock went up by 10.1% because inflation was that high at that point, and in 2024, 8.5% because inflation was still high at that point, these kind of economic circumstances, like moments, pile the pressure on to the state pension. And so it's really, really important to kind of acknowledge this, because if you look at the state pension bill for 2024, it was £124 billion. With the triple lock increasing that as you go along every single year, we're going to get to a position where if we don't have a good enough working population, this is where immigration and the conversation of having people move over to the UK to come and work, to increase the tax take, all of that comes in. But we know that we're in an environment at the moment which is very anti-immigration. So we're in a bit of a catch-22. And I want to kind of just, highlight a conversation that was had, again, on LBC. And this is something that demonstrates the fact that as a nation, sometimes we're just not equipped to have these kind of conversations because we're not listening to what the problem is. Fundamentally, if they means test the state pension, the people who are going to potentially be the ones who are going to lose out will be wealthy people who have other streams of income, and that money could then be used to prop up those people who don't have additional streams of income, who are going to be relying on the state pension, or at least that's how you would hope it works. And look, we're never going to know until everything is kind of put in place and it starts to work. But what I'm trying to say here is we can't continue on the same path that we have been on, hoping that things are going to be different if something doesn't change in the meantime. We are looking for drastic solutions here. And I don't think the idea of means testing the triple lock is a bad idea. If you think about means testing the state pension, that's a completely different conversation. We've spoken about this here on the channel before. But means testing the triple lock is not a bad idea. But let me just play you this clip from, again, LBC, and just hear how, as a nation, I don't think we're open to this kind of conversation because we're just not listening to one another.
Director of Silver Voices, a group that campaigns on behalf of over 60s. Dennis, great to have you with us this afternoon. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. Suspect you might have a slightly different perspective on this to me, or maybe not. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, I think what you said, Ben, was a travesty of the truth. I mean, it was an outrageously biased comment about the triple lock. I think what you have to remember, and those opponents of the triple lock, is that the basic state pension in our country is one of the lowest in the developed world. And the basic state pension for most of us
Mm-hmm.
is £169.50 a week, even with the triple lock. Now, I would challenge you, if that is your only source of income, to live in the current world,
Yes.
with all the price increases, on that sort of money.
But Dennis,
And
no,
another-
no,
and
I'm not.
another
That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying those that do have other sources of income, significant income, they don't need the triple lock. The people that you're talking about, I would agree with you completely. They need more money than they're getting right now.
Yeah, well, that's many millions of older people.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
The other fallacy, which you just repeated there, is that somehow or other this is a gift, this is a benefit for older people. You are paying now national insurance, so that when you get older,
Yeah.
you will get the state pension, just as you may be putting into a private pension pot. So it's
I'm just going to interject here because I've mentioned on the channel that the state pension is no longer an entitlement. It is a benefit. And again, people just don't get it. It's actually enshrined in law. It was changed in law quite a few years back and officially classed as a benefit, not an entitlement. But again, we're not listening to each other. Like, there is no acknowledgement of this idea in this exchange, as you're going to see, that the means testing of the state pension will be for those who have surplus income who don't need the increase. He does not get this, and you'll see this become more and more apparent as this exchange continues.
It's completely outrageous to suggest that people have paid in all their lives through national insurance shouldn't get the state pension.
But no, again, Dennis, who's suggesting no people who've paid in shouldn't get the state pension? Kemi Badenoch's not. I'm not. You're completely misinterpreting what we're saying. I have never said that people who pay in shouldn't get a pension. People who have paid in all their life should get a pension.
You're saying it should get means tested.
No. She is saying, and I'm agreeing with her, that the triple lock should be means tested. So people would still get a pension. It just wouldn't be guaranteed that they'd get at least 2% more, 2.5% more every single year. That's what she's saying.
Well, that's a ridiculous statement as well. All the triple lock does is keep the state pension in line with the cost of living. So, of course, you're reducing the state pension if you're not implementing the triple
it doesn't, because if the cost of living is lower, if the inflation is lower than 2.5%, then the pension goes up by more than living costs have gone up.
We're talking about pennies here when you're only on £169.50 a week.
And again, he's not listening. He's not getting the point. He's not listened to the key argument of who it would be means tested for. And like, this clip is 7 minutes long, and it is literally this back and forth of you're missing the point of what the means testing and who it will be aimed at. Not people who need it in their state pension, but people who have other forms of income that don't actually need it in their state pension because they are well off. They won't get the triple lock, despite the fact that they are also entitled to it. I think it's really important that we listen to each other, and we can't continue doing the same thing over and over again. We're in a mess because there have been so many inefficiencies, and the system at the minute is just completely and utterly broken. We need something new. So when conversations about means testing the triple lock or doing whatever is necessary to ensure that we can have a state pension moving forward, we have to be open to that conversation. And here's the thing that I'm going to end on, and this is going to ruffle a few feathers. I see it in the comment section all the time, and I'm sure I'm going to see it like in the comment section for this particular video. People talking about the state pension is often the only thing that people have in retirement. And, that's my nest egg. Well, I have to be really harsh here. It's not the government's fault that you didn't pay into a workplace or a private pension. That's your choice. That's your fault. That's your bad. That's you not doing what you should have done and paying attention to the things that you should have done when you had the opportunity to do so. And I feel like this idea of being completely and utterly reliant on the government to provide absolutely everything is unsustainable as a mentality in the UK, period. And this is why I always say to younger people, do not be reliant and start waiting for the state pension. Because the truth is, the state pension might not even be around when the 20-somethings of this world get to 60. The state pension age, if it is available, will probably be mid-70s at that point. So do not depend on it. We have a lot of people like this campaigner here who is obviously, he's worked his entire life. He is a pensioner, he's of a pensionable age, and he feels irate because it potentially impacts him, which is completely fine. But we need to have a forward-looking approach to our pension system, to our state pension, to our triple lock. And if you, through your working life, when you had defined benefit schemes, a guaranteed job for life, if you didn't pay into a pension, that's your fault. No one else's. No one else's. And the simple fact is, and again, I know this is going to ruffle people's feathers. I don't really care at this point because it's an honest conversation we need to have. The younger people are the ones paying for the state pension right now. And Kemi Badenoch kind of alluded to the fact that we are, as a nation, living off our inheritance. What happens to 20-something-year-olds when they get to state pension? I feel like we're in this position where one generation cannot see the view of another generation, and there never will be a meeting point between the two of us. But hey, let's discuss in the comment section down below. I personally don't think it's a bad idea to means test the triple lock. I would much rather means test the triple lock than means test the state pension. And that is going to be bad news or not pleasant listening to a lot of people who may watch this video. But at the end of the day, this is a discourse that we need to have as a country, because what we're doing right now is not sustainable. That is fact.